Well, the first thing to remember is that President Obama was under...
In November 2019, as the U.S. House of Representatives holds impeachment hearings for President Trump, Professor Stephen F. Cohen, in an interview about his book, said of U.S. military support to Ukraine.
First of all, what everybody must want is peace between Russia and Ukraine. So why would you pour more weapons? Why would you tempt one Ukrainian? Now the leadership of Ukraine has changed, but why would you tempt one or another Ukrainian leadership to broaden the war, where you want, above all, to bring peace, correct? Secondly, in whose hands eventually do such weapons fall? I mean, there's no guarantee in a place like Ukraine that the Ukrainian army, which is involved in the black market in a big way, those weapons could go anywhere. But ultimately, you have a situation now, which seems not to be widely understood, that the new president of Ukraine, Zelensky, ran as a peace candidate. Zelensky won by, I think, 71, 72%. He won an enormous mandate to make peace. So that means he has to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. And there are various formats, right? There's the so-called Minsk format, which involves the German and the French. There's bilateral directly with Putin. But his willingness, and this is what's important and not well reported here, his willingness to deal directly with Putin, which his predecessor, Poroshenko, was not, or couldn't, or whatever reason, actually required considerable boldness on Zelensky because there are opponents of this in Ukraine and they are armed. Some people say they're fascist, but they're certainly ultra-nationalist. So now along comes Trump, right? So Trump makes a wrong-headed phone call to Zelensky about Biden and information. It was a wrong thing to do. There were two ways of looking at that. But the more important thing is, and that's why I'd like to see the full transcript of the, we've only been given a partial so far as I know. I want to know if Trump encouraged Zelensky to continue the negotiation with Putin. And here's why. Zelensky cannot go forward, as I've explained. I mean, his life is being threatened, literally, by quasi-fascist movements in Ukraine. He can't go forward with full peace negotiations with Russia, with Putin, unless America has his back. Maybe that won't be enough, but unless the White House encourages this diplomacy, Zelensky has no chance of negotiating an end to the war. So the stakes are enormously high. All this stuff by Biden, it's bad, but it's a distraction. It's not what we should be focusing on. We should not be shipping more weapons there. What we should be doing, and certainly what, given Trump's inclination to be a deal maker and like a semi-peace candidate, but you wonder if there's anybody around him to explain these things to him. But this is an opportunity for Trump to do the right thing and do it clean, to say to Zelensky, I support this negotiation with Putin. I hope that you and Putin can settle your conflicts. If the Germans and the French, because there was a so-called Minsk format that involved them, need to be brought in, okay. But Europe's pretty much lost interest in this. And there's no leader. I mean, what makes the moment interesting, stop and think about it a minute, Eric, is there's no kind of, what's the right word? There's no transformative or decisive type of leadership in Europe.
In this context, Professor Cohen mentions that Biden has said that Zelensky could not negotiate directly with Putin without U.S. support. As long as there were militant forces opposed to peace, this suggests that there was a risk of war depending on the situation. On September 18, 2020, Professor Stephen F. Cohen passed away. A few days later, on September 23, 2020, in a speech to the UN General Assembly, Zelensky stressed the need for de-occupation of Crimea, annexed by Russia, and called for reform of the UN.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm honored to introduce a pre-recorded statement by His Excellency Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine.
Неприпустимо, коли суверенітет незалежної держави порушує один з постійних членів Ради безпеки ООН. Це остаточно доводить механізми зразка 1945 року, сьогодні працюють не до кінця. Все це може призвести до подальшого знецінення Ради безпеки. Україна братиме активну участь у процесі її реформування. Питання Криму та Донбасу не мають стати звичними елементами міжнародного пейзажу, де лише доповіді, тематичні зустрічі та протокольні заяви до роковин окупації будуть вважатися достатньою формою міжнародної реакції. Навпаки, допоки рана у центрі Європи кровоточить, біль відчуватиме весь світ. І єдиним рецептом дієвого лікування є лише деокупація Криму і Донбасу. Україна, як одна із держав, яка з 2014 року активно протидіє пропаганді та інформаційним атакам, готова ініціювати створення в Києві штаб-квартири Міжнародного офісу з протидії дезінформації та пропаганді. Щороку заклик до дій замість розмов лунає в Генеральній асамблеї все потужніше. Це свідчення кризи, в якій перебуває ООН, безпекова архітектура, здоров'я людства, нашої економіки та світ в цілому. 75-та річниця заснування ООН має стати стимулом для перетворення організації на більш динамічну та ефективну структуру.
Professor Stephen F. Cohen expected Zelensky's peace between Russia and Ukraine under the Trump administration. However, Zelensky has steered the ship toward retaking Crimea and the Donbass in a way that would involve the international community. This is, in effect, like a declaration to the world that the Minsk Accord, unanimously approved by the UN Security Council, is to be abrogated. In his annual address to the Ukrainian parliament on October 20th, Zelensky said that those who gave up Crimea without a fight must be held accountable, and further government is doing everything possible to return Crimea to Ukrainian control. We are building a Ukrainian army that will be capable of defending Ukraine on the ground, in the sea, in the sky, in cyberspace. So that nobody would have the notion that it is possible to encroach upon our sovereignty, territorial integrity, or take part of Ukrainian territory without a single gunshot, he added. But why did Zelensky indicate a major change of direction at this time? Regardless of whether the U.S. presidential election results in a second term for the Trump administration or a Biden administration, Zelensky decided to go ahead and build a new framework to retake Crimea and the Donbass. Or did he have some prospect of doing so? On September 8th to 9th, prior to the UN General Assembly, Kyiv Jewish Forum 2020, co-hosted by the Ukrainian Jewish Federation and the Jerusalem Post Group, was held in Kiev. The event, which brings together prominent Jewish leaders from Ukraine, Israel, the United States, the European Union, and around the world to discuss challenges facing the Jewish community, has been running since 2019.
Вітаю Єврейську конфедерацію України та Jerusalem Post з організацією Київського єврейського форуму. Це партнерство демонструє стратегічне значення відносин між Україною та Ізраїлем, а також особливу роль, яку відіграє єврейська громада в житті нашої країни. Україна завжди була відкритою країною, яка поважає всі релігійні конфесії. Багато українців носять високе звання праведника народів світу. Нещодавно моїм указом запропоновано надати святам Рош ха-Шана, Песах та Ханука статус державних свят. Нам усім важливо працювати разом заради недопущення ксенофобії, нетерпимості, антисемітизму. Працювати разом, розвиваючи толерантність та повагу до всіх національностей і конфесій. Ми не маємо права забути злочини та звірства минулого. Молодь повинна знати і пам'ятати про них, щоб ніколи не допустити знову. Користуючись нагодою, хочу відзначити прекрасну ініціативу Єврейської конфедерації України під назвою «Праведники мого міста». Цей проєкт присвячений пам'яті українців, які, ризикуючи власним життям, рятували євреїв під час Другої світової війни. Вони взірець для всіх наступних поколінь. Я бажаю всім спікерам і учасникам форуму плідних дискусій та дебатів, у яких неодмінно народиться істина. Істина, що зробить цей світ добрішим і кращим.
Stronger relations with the Jewish community cannot be ignored in today's international community. Its backing is a strength for Zelensky. But does the tolerance and respect for all peoples and religions mentioned in this speech not apply to Russians? decree making a Jewish festival day a national holiday in Ukraine? Will the country really belong to the Ukrainian people if they have a military group with ultranationalist ideology and exclude Russians? To whom will the vast reserves of energy resources go? With a variety of issues encompassing the country, Ukraine will move forward into the 2021 year of action.